Welcome, eCom Logistics Nation. We're thrilled to be coming to you live from the heart of Atlanta at Modex 2024, right here at the Georgia World Congress Center. A shout out to our sponsor, G&P Construction, your go-to provider for comprehensive turnkey material handling and solutions in both logistics and commercial needs. We are truly grateful for the support.
It's hard to have an ASRS system without a good WMS because you won't get the full value out of it because you'll be sub-optimizing it in some way. You can't have a really well utilized automation system without a strong WMS underlying it.
Welcome, eCom Logistics Podcast Nation. We are here again at Modex with our friend Jon from AutoStore's. Jon, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Jon, it's exciting. AutoStore, finally, on our podcast. It's actually happening.
Glad to be here.
Long time we've waited for this, Jon, so expectations are extremely high.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Jon, just as a way of getting started, can you share with our audience maybe a little bit about your past experience and what you're doing today with AutoStore?
Yeah, absolutely. So I lead our business development team in North America at AutoStore. We're helping customers in the earliest stages considering automation and things like AutoStore for their facilities. I spent a couple of years doing piece picking at a startup called Robotics, doing a lot of AutoStore projects. So that's probably how I found the technology. And before that, spent time at Amazon by way of the Kiva acquisition. So I did a lot of early generation AMR deployments and some of the first users of autonomous mobile robots, but then some of the largest deployments that Amazon was doing kind of later in the time there. So I'm all warehouse robots all the time.
So going back to the Kiva days, were you part of Quiet and when that acquisition took place?
So Quiet Logistics was a customer. I was their performance engineer for a first Quiet site that was using Kiva.
Wow.
Before they had Locus Robotics and before the Amazon acquisition of Kiva, and helped them get that live. For a guitar pick company was one of their first customers. Okay. A really small Kiva system. It was just 10 robots and a few hundred pods, but really good fulfillment for them. And of course, they grew that into a really large, strong 3PL business. Gradually, after the Amazon acquisition, invented their own technology to help with their fulfillment. They didn't want to pay for expensive ASRS storage. They wanted the robots to move the orders and do some value. So it was super interesting for me early in my career to see that and see them with that strong pivot to build some of their own technology, as the ability to build robots became a little bit more possible. The wireless technology became better, the ecosystem of people that you could hire to build that stuff. And now we see, of course, lots of robotics companies in the space at a show like this, but certainly Locus was one of the early ones to make a strong move after the Kiva acquisition on behalf of Quiet Logistics.
You said something about clients that are in early stage. What do you mean by that? Do you have a specific focus area on early stage? Is someone just looking into it and their footprint, or how do you define early stage?
Yeah. So when I think early stage, customers that have either never had automation or never had automation like an AutoStore or an ASRS system, they're picking with carts and shelves. And maybe I've been to a lot of buildings that have no WMS. They're still working from paper and clipboards. And I'll be honest, I've been to some warehouses that are incredibly efficient with paper and clipboards, and they've got one person that is dishing out the work very efficiently, better than any WES or MS ever could. There are many warehouses that have those systems, and it's just by sheer growth, they've outgrown what their system could do. They started with 100 SKUs and a few pickers. They're at thousands of SKUs and hundreds of pickers, and they're still using the same strategy. And of course, they've outgrown that. And so they're paying the price either in productivity loss or accuracy, and now it's impacting their customer relationships. So then they're ready to jump into something and adopt something like an AutoStore or automation.
At what point should someone think about AutoStore? There is RaaS services out in the market. There is many options. And as you can see, we are here at Modex with the amount of automation that we have on the floor. With fixed automation, it comes at a cost relative to some of the other things. But at what point is that threshold kind of broken?
It's a good question. I have a really simple rule of thumb for this. 10 people pick, pack, and shipping, and 1,000 orders a day, or 1,000 order lines a day of significant complexity. So you probably want 1,000 SKUs or more. If you've got less SKUs, one person can close their eyes and memorize where all those items are and go get them. If you've got fewer orders, it's hard to make an ROI, or fewer pickers. There's just not enough people and labor to save if you were to automate. If you have a very highly variable business, all your business is done in a few weeks of the year, or you have a tremendous amount of space and you're not outgrowing it, or you're constantly in flux, like you don't know what next year is going to look like at all, then it's really hard to invest in the long run maybe you could call us fixed automation, but it's something that's going to be the same type of fulfillment over the next several years that you can actually see the payback over the, say, next 3 years. But barring those things, most people are at that 10 picker threshold and need something like an AutoStore to better use their space and labor.
10 pickers. That seems pretty low for like I would not have thought like AutoStore something you consider at 10 pickers. That just like, I mean, when I think about AutoStore, I'll be very honest. I think about like millions of dollars in capital investment. If I got 10 pickers, what's my ROI at that point, right? I'm asking like a customer, all right, so tell me.
Yeah, the bread and butter AutoStore is just a few ports with maybe a couple dozen robots and a few thousand bins. In Germany, where we have hundreds of installations, the typical AutoStore is just 10 robots and thousands of bins. So you can really scale it down. And a lot of the newer technologies that are using fleets of robots and more scalable storage.
Very interesting. I did not know that, to be very honest. And it's not just AutoStore, by the way. Any GTP I look at, other than it's a RAS, like, portable or, non-fixed kind of asset goods to person type capability, like it's 10 pickers may be acceptable, but that's very interesting. So
yeah. I think it is surprising for a lot of folks. I'm not going to say that anybody could go scare up, $1 million or more to do a project like this, and where maybe some of the robot as a service or zero CapEx upfront options can make more sense out of the gate. You don't have to go to your CFO for that first check. There's another nuance maybe that I missed too, which is like, I talked about paper-based picking systems, but if you don't have a WMS, you can't build automation on top of no WMS, right? Exactly. It's very hard to jump to automation. So I think of, and I talk about sometimes like a Maslow's hierarchy of like really good people and process. Like you have to understand your business and how to run a good operation. And then you have to have a good software layer that's actually executing or matching those physical processes with what needs to be flowing. And then you can think about layering an automation that is talking to that WMS and really in concert with what the software needs to help deliver. And then you can talk about really, really high-end automation like piece picking robotics. Exactly. or truck unloading robots and things that are doing even more nuanced automation around your sort of traditional automation.
And that's the interesting part, right? Like, so there is a lot of this automation that gets put in place. People want to have the full ecosystem to control. And I'm glad that you brought that up, that there is like all of these other pieces like picking robots, or you might want to bring packing robots or whatnot. That also indicates the fact that most of the places you would end up going, or a goods to person, it's not the only solution inside that building. You still have your manual flows. You still have your bulk flows.
The one thing that maybe you could help talk about how 3PLs could work around it is they're usually in a very condensed period of time. They might be dealing with a 3 or 5 year contract. That contract is usually tied to the length of the lease of the building. And many of the cases that 3PL is used, you're going to have way more than 10 pickers, right? You're going to have the complexity and the volume is going to be there. So maybe if you could walk us through some use cases or where you've seen it be successful for 3PLs in the space.
Yeah, let me talk about a really simple short-term use case that I've seen, and then like my view of how things may evolve in the future with an analogy. So in the short term, I think we've seen a lot of 3PLs that are successful in partnering with potential customers to get them to co-invest either through a longer relationship, extended contract, or to share in the cost of a automation system so that there's mutual benefit. Less labor, less wasted space, less cost overall, and they can share those cost savings together. It's not just one or the other. Sometimes that means the end user pays for the automation and the 3PL contract now is at a better price. Sometimes it's a shared investment, and sometimes the 3PL invests in it. And the 3PL can invest in it knowing that, okay, they're able to ask for a few more years on the contract, which means they're not negotiating as often, but also like, it's not like that asset is worth zero at the end of the contract. They can most likely put another customer in because everybody has some portion of each's. And that's maybe where I get to my second point, which is, I don't know, we used to, for any facility or office building, we used to build a closet full of IT servers, and it was custom bespoke, and it was that, but like it turned out everybody needed some type of IT closet. And so we were making that more standard. And then we went to sort of cloud shared services. And I think 3PLs, you're seeing some that are building these multi-tenant facilities where they're building a huge amount of automated each storage and pallet storage and case storage, but they know they can put multiple tenants in it in the long run. And they have a new building design that looks more like a cloud data center, but the equivalent for a 3PL space where they're invested in the long run and they sell contracts in it, they have to fill it up. But I think that becomes more the norm over the next years.
So for 3PLs, we've done our hypothesis on this front, right? With the cost of labor, if you have the throughput, if you have the volume, if you have the right density, you have the right SKU, subset, good data and intelligence, with labor environments today, I don't think you have a choice but to develop and invest in your own 3PLs where if you are multi-tenant environment, you are installing a GTP of some sort that can manage that, right? Like I think that's just no longer something that's, something you wish for. It's what you have to do in the current environment. But it does require, to your point, a little bit of strategic insight to say, watch where the puck is going, right?
Yes, I think so. And I think we're seeing more and more the 3PLs being selected at the bidding point, at the RFP, because they're applying automation or they're saying, we have an automation option for you. And it's helping them win business in a way that if you don't have it, basically you're going to get left behind. You're going to start, one day you'll wake up and all the tenants you thought you had with your manual approach, you didn't win those RFPs.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, as you said, we get to see a lot of these like RFPs and wins within 3PL space. It's starting to become the norm now to say, hey, it's an 8 or 10 year contract, but I'm going to build you this like mecca of a facility that includes some form of GTP automation, storage automation, pick, pack automation, right? And outbound sorter, etc. It's starting to become pretty much the norm.
I think the other part of what makes that a norm is not just winning the contract, but actually serving that volume. Usually those are by network topology, they want to be in hubs. So everybody's co-located. There's only so much labor density. And so you're vying for labor, and employees don't want to push a cart. They don't want to walk down 10 miles a day to do their pick, pack, and ship. And so if the 3PL next door has an automated approach that allows them to work in an ergonomic workspace and not be exhausted at the end of the day, they're going to choose that 10 times out of 10. And so your labor staffing, we know there's stats about just much lower turnover rates and much easier, much better work environment, but much higher retention and the ability to actually get the throughput with the system you design when it's automated. Norwegian,
right? So with that European mindset, right, specifically, I think there is the cost constraints that we talk about today in North America are kind of new in our environment than they have been in the European market. So you said hundreds of implementation in the European market. I'm guessing like, oh, we know exactly what's about to happen here, and that's why we got the play. Would that be?
So in general, at a show like Modex, right, if you go to the shows in Europe, traditionally, you were kind of peering into the future of what might be here in a decade. I think that timescale is shortened. You used to see way more automation in Logimat, which happens next week, and less here. But now it's a little bit closer to parity. But I think when it comes to the ROI side and the labor challenges, the space challenges, we're seeing a lot of the trends that happened first in Northern Europe and now are happening in America at kind of the same time. We're having, with inflation, you have wage inflation. And so the ROI gets better. And yeah, I joke sometimes that my Norwegian colleagues kind of living in the future because they are living in a more labor constrained environment. Right. They pay employees a lot better. So working in a warehouse is a great job, but it's also now they can invest and make that a better job. You're working in an ergonomic workspace and they're using labor in a more human manner, frankly. And so I think we're just catching up to that a little bit in the US, and we're definitely seeing the wage increases that allow you to invest so that your employees have a better experience and you can retain them.
That's very interesting.
Absolutely. So, Jon, one of the things we wanted to cover is obviously we're here at Modex, and I don't know how many football fields worth of trade show booths here, but many, many, many hundreds of yards. And you can't turn a corner without seeing a robotic solution or some form of automation. You need a good WMS, right? Before you start really thinking of layering automation onto Google Sheets or Excel workbooks, right? So when we think about that, though, maybe your experience with the complexity and the importance of when you're looking at different options in the market, the integration that goes into the core WMS type solutions you have when you're trying to layer in robotics or any type of automation.
Yeah. I think that's, it goes back to the difference of like this show maybe a few decades ago, right? There weren't a lot of robots here. This was not like a manufacturing show where it's highly automated. It was forklifts and pallet racking and still things that are essential and important. But now the show is full of robots. Now there's so many different kinds, but it's not like you can go buy one of those things and bring it home and turn it on and it cleans your floor like a Roomba. Like that's just not how this stuff works. These are fleet systems that are tightly integrated and are very much working in concert with the software that runs the buildings, the WMS and the WES or warehouse execution software layers. So the integration, getting that right, getting all the requirements and all the data flows right is so essential. The number of automation projects that, usually when they go wrong, it's not because the hardware wasn't installed correctly, because there's manuals for that. That's easy. But if you didn't figure out how the orders needed to flow to meet the priorities and get them on the trucks at the right time, that operation will never run right. And so it's a really important base layer to then be able to bring automation into. It's partly why we work through integration partners and why you really, it's hard to have an AutoStore or an ASRS system without a good WMS, because you just won't get, you won't get the full value out of it because you'll be sub-optimizing it in some way. And you won't get all the extra benefit, real-time prioritization and being able to downgrade shipments because you ship them so quickly because the WMS was able to take that action. And so they are very, they work together really well. You need both. You can't have a really well utilized automation system without a strong WMS underlying it.
So maybe the elephant in the room, a lot of the companies that are here at Modex, right? You see them evolve from one automation solution to the other. They get into picking, they get into packing, right? They get into like shipping. They also then start saying, okay, I'm going to do some receiving, right? Next thing you know, they start pretending to be a WMS. Is that something that's in the books for you guys? Or you guys are saying this is what we know and this is what we are going to stick to?
Yeah, I think for us, we've been super focused on the 5 core modules. Like it might be a little bit boring, but like we make a really good machine and it's, bins, grid, robots, ports, and the software controller. Those things are the key modules that allow you to build a piece picking engine. I think our partners then wrap that into a solution that ties into a full building. We don't have pallet movement. We don't have case movement. We are collaborative with piece picking companies, packaging automation companies, conveyance companies, and our partners are what kind of stitch that together with all the solutions that are out there to bring to bear on somebody's warehouse. So I give the early product team at AutoStore a lot of credit because those are fun things to go chase as a product development company. But we've been dead focused on the same bin size that we've had. And all the AutoStore stuff is actually backwards compatible, going back to the original dimensions. We got that right. And
that's awesome.
But yeah, we've been really diligent about saying no to some of those other avenues or other parts of the warehouse.
One of the things that we have also heard, and I want to give you the opportunity, is to talk about this concept of digging versus like VNA, GTP automation, right? The fact that it takes time, right? And digging's not right. And I know there is an argument around like it's the algorithm that does the placement. So the less you dig, the better it is. I'm sure when you are in deals, you are having this conversation.
Every single time.
Yeah.
Of course, I would refer everybody to a really detailed article I wrote called Bin Digging Explained. But short of that, all ASRS systems have some level of digging. Most of the ASRS systems that talk about any level of high density are at least double deep, if not triple deep in storage, which means they're moving a bin out of the way to get to the one behind it. The bottom of an AutoStore is essentially equivalent to the top furthest away part of the rack in a shuttle system or different type of ASRS system that has single access, but much further away. So because we're compact, the digging is counteracted actually by the distance we travel less, not to mention that we're using the whole top of the grid. In order to prevent digging, what we're doing is the AutoStore systems are always perfectly slotted. So we've let the cold, unused things drift down to the bottom naturally. And then anything you've ordered has been surfaced to the top before those orders are being processed. That's part of that coordination with the WMS. We're looking at what orders are coming. And even we can take a forecast signal for what items might be needed in the future. All of that work means the robots always have something to do. You can do that overnight when you're not pick, pack, and shipping. You can do that during inbound when your robot usage is less. So it's obviously a topic I'm super biased and passionate about it. But what was funny is, we talk about inventory Pareto's, and it's a super common thing, but slotting is such a big part of manual warehouses. And any ASRS really requires that.
Amazing, Jon. We really appreciate the time and the conversation. I want to wish you a great rest of the show here at Modex. Could you share with the audience where they could go to, where you are, where you spend most of your time when you're on social media, where they could go to follow you, whether that's LinkedIn or X or wherever that might be?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn for sure. I try to share things like this all the time there. So appreciate that. Jon H. Schechter on LinkedIn. Appreciate you guys having me on the show today.
Absolutely. Our pleasure.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Jon.
Thank you, guys.
As we bring another episode to a close here at Modex, we want to extend our gratitude to GNP Construction for their sponsorship of the podcast. If you're in need of top-notch, all-inclusive material handling solutions for logistics and commercial real estate, look no further than GNP Construction. Be sure to visit GANDPconstruction.com to discover your one-stop shop for turnkey MHE integrations.
Hi, I'm Acharya, CEO and co-founder of Fulfillment IQ, and I'm here with
Dan Coll, CRO and partner at Fulfillment IQ. We're the team behind the eCom Logistics podcast. Our mission is to provide you with genuine insights from our work alongside logistics leaders to help you improve your supply chain.
In the eCom Logistics podcast, we share the knowledge and the insights we've gained from working alongside amazing brands, retailers, 3PLs, and VCs, so you can make the most out of your supply chain journey.
If you like what you're hearing, we'd truly appreciate your support with a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting channel. Your feedback not only keeps us going, but also helps others find the podcast. If you think Fulfillment IQ can assist you, or if you have an idea related to logistics, just reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're always up for a chat and ready to explore new possibilities together.
Stay tuned to the eCom Logistics podcast on your favorite podcast platform for fresh and practical insights into e-commerce and logistics. Until next time, let's keep making a difference.